The Adopting of Rosa Marie by Carol Watson Rankin. Chapter 3. Mabel's Day. Almost hopeless as it seemed at times, Mabel and the silent brown baby finally reached Dandelion Cottage. There they found Jean, seated in a chair with her lovely little cousin, Anne Halliday, perched like a pink and white blossom on the edge of the dining-room table before her, tying Anne's bewitching yellow curls with wide pink ribbons. Anne was a perpetual delight, for, besides being a picture during every moment of the long day, her ways were so quaint and so attractive that no one could help admiring her. Marjorie, her countenance carefully arranged to depict the deepest sorrow, stood guard over the Marcotte twins, who, touchingly covered with nasturtiums, were laid out on the parlor cozy corner, awaiting burial. Their blue eyes blinked and their pink toes twitched, but, on the whole, they played their parts in a most satisfactory manner. Betty, with two small but attractive Tucker babies clinging to her brief skirts, was exclaiming, "These are my jewels," when tired, dusty Mabel, pushing reluctant Rosa Marie before her, walked in. "For mercy's sake, what's that?" gasped Jean, sweeping Anne Halliday into her protecting arms. Is it something the cat dragged in?" asked Marjorie. Can it be a real child?" demanded Betty. "This," announced Mabel with dignity, "is my child. Her name is Rosa Marie, with all the distress on the E." "The distress seems to be all over both of you," giggled Marjorie. "That's just dust," explained Mabel. "Did you both roll home like a pair of barrels?" queried Jean, "or did the village improvement folks use you to dust the sidewalks?" "What's the matter with the child's complexion?" demanded Marjorie. "Is she tanned?" "Coming home took long enough for both of us to get tanned," returned Mabel crossly, "but Rosa Marie's French, I guess." French nothing!" exclaimed Marjorie. "She's nothing but a little wild Indian. Look at her hair, look at her small black eyes, look at her high cheekbones. Where in the world did you get her?" Mabel explained. For once the girls listened with the most flattering attention. Anne Halliday bobbed her pretty head to punctuate each sentence. The Tucker babies stood in silence with their mouths open. Even the nicely laid out Marcotte twins on the sofa sat up to hear the tale. "And she's all mine until 6 o'clock," concluded Mabel triumphantly. "If she were mine," said Jean, "I'd give her a bath." "I'd give her two," giggled Marjorie. So Mabel, assisted by Jean, Marjorie, Betty, little Anne, the two Tucker babies, and now the very much alive Marcotte twins, gave Rosa Marie a bath in the dishpan. Although they changed the water as fast as they could heat more in the tea kettle, although they used a whole bar of strong yellow soap, 2 teaspoonsful of washing powder, and a very scratchy washcloth lathered with sapolio, Rosa Marie, who bore it all with stolid patience, was still richly brown from head to heels when she emerged from her bath. "Let's play Pocahontas," cried Marjorie, seizing the feather duster. "Put feathers in her hair and drape her in my brown petticoat. I'll be Captain John Smith in Bob Tucker's rubber boots." "You won't either," retorted Mabel indignantly. "I guess, after I dragged this child all the way up here to play mother with, I'm not going to have her used for any old Pocahontases. She's my child, and I'm going to have the entire use of her while she lasts." "After all," replied Marjorie cuttingly, "I don't want her. I'm sure I wouldn't care for any of that colored children. The usual shade is quite good enough for me." But, while the novelty lasted and in spite of Marjorie's declaration, Rosa Marie was a distinct success. Little Anne Halliday's cunningest ways and quaintest speeches went unheeded when Rosa Marie refused to wear shoes and stockings. She had never worn a shoe, and without uttering a word she made it plain that she had no intention of hampering her pudgy brown feet with the cast-off footgear of the young Tuckers. Neither would she wear clothes until Jean showed her the solitary garment she had arrived in, now soaking in a pan of soapy water. After they had arrayed her in a long-sleeved apron of Anne's, it didn't go round, but had to be helped out with the cheesecloth duster. It was evident that the unaccustomed whiteness bothered her. She was not used to being so remarkably stiff and clean. The Marcotte twins, again prepared for burial, quarreled most engagingly as to which should be buried under the apple tree, both preferring that fruitful resting place to the barren waste under the snowball bush. But nobody listened because Rosa Marie was doing extraordinary things with her bowl of bread and milk. Having lapped the milk like a cat, she was deftly chasing the crumbs round the bowl with a greedy and experienced tongue. It was plain that Rosa Marie had no table manners. As for the infantile Tuckers, they were an old story. On this occasion they crawled into the corner cupboard and went to sleep, and nobody missed them for a whole hour, just because Rosa Marie was emitting queer little startled grunts every time Marjorie's best doll wailed, "Mama! Papa!" for her benefit. There was no doubt about it. Rosa Marie was decidedly amusing. The day passed swiftly, much too swiftly, Mabel thought. Very much mothered Rosa Marie, who had obligingly consumed an amazing amount of milk, all, indeed, that the cottagers had been able to procure, started homeward, towed by Mabel. That elated young person had declined all offers of company. She coveted the full glory of returning Rosa Marie to her rightful guardian. Mabel, indeed, was visibly swollen with pride. She had given the cottagers a most unusual treat. She had not only surprised them by proving that she could borrow a baby, but had kept them amused and entertained every moment of the day. It had certainly been a red-letter day in the annals of Dandelion Cottage. Mabel more than half expected to meet Rosa Marie's mother on the very first corner. The other real mothers had always seemed desirous, over-desirous, Mabel thought, of welcoming their homecoming babies back to the fold. But the mother of Rosa Marie, apparently, was of a less grudging disposition. Mabel laboriously escorted her reluctant charge to the very door of the shanty without encountering any welcoming parent. The borrower of Rosa Marie knocked. No one came. She tried the door. It was locked. "How queer," said Mabel. "Seems to me I'd be on hand if I had an engagement at exactly 6 o'clock. But then, I always am late." Dragging an empty wooden box to the side of the house, Mabel climbed to the high, decidedly smudgy window and peered in. There was no one inside. There was no fire in the battered stove. The doors of a rough cupboard opposite the window stood open, disclosing the fact that the cupboard was bare. There were no bedclothes in the rough bunk that served for a bed. No dishes on the table. No clothing hanging from the hooks on the wall. Both inside and outside, the house wore a strangely deserted aspect. It seemed to say, "Nobody lives here now. Nobody ever did live here. Nobody ever will live here." End of chapter 3.